So I'm Vic Perangelo. I am the regional manager for ProSoft Technology. I'm also a field specialist based out of New York. I've been with ProSoft for about 4 years. And in my 4 years, I've noticed that, so ProSoft makes about 450 different products. But everybody I run into doesn't realize that. So if I take those 450 products, you don't have to read this. If I take those 450 products and I group them into 4 sections, it kind of breaks down like this. Protocol converters, all right? This is what ProSoft is known for. You've got a system, a Rockwell system needs to talk to Siemens or Schneider, whatever it might be. We're known, the company was founded on protocol converters. We've got something like 40 plus protocols in 200 different hardware combinations. So if you think about it, if a protocol was a language, ProSoft is Rosetta Stone, like that. And this is what everybody knows us for. But then I'm not really going to get into what that entails, but the second thing that we do is what's called phased modernization, right? Or phased migration. So what is that? When you talk about modernization, prior to ProSoft, I used to be a system integrator. And when I came across an old system with legacy controls, my first preference was to gut it, right? Do a rip and replace. Take all the old stuff out, put in all new. The problem is what happened with that is you'd quote it and then nothing would happen because the old system is still working, right? So I did, the second thing was what I call do nothing and pray, right? The customers do nothing and they keep their fingers crossed. And then what happens is you end up getting a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning that something went down and now you're sourcing parts on eBay, right? So what ProSoft can do in this situation is instead of gutting the system and replacing everything, we could do a partial migration. You can keep your old SLIC, you can keep your old PLC5, you don't even have to touch the code. And you could, with ProSoft, you could swap out like an old 1336 drive or an old PanelView and put in something Ethernet based like PanelView Plus, and now you have Bluehost talking to Ethernet, right? So that's the phase migration. I'm not gonna get into much of that either. The third thing we do is industrial wireless, AKA wireless LAN, AKA radios, got a whole bunch of different names. I'm going to get into this in detail right now. And the last thing we do is secure remote access, okay? So for the rest of my time up here, I'm going to focus on these two on the left. So we'll start with industrial wireless. Before we even get into that, the ProSoft product portfolio for industrial wireless is right here in my hands. 802.11 Wi-Fi or cellular. This is ProSoft's portfolio. I'm going to start with this one, 802.11 Wi-Fi. What is it, right? It's basically what you have in your house. It's 802.11 A, B, G, N. It's an edge connector, right? Reaching out to the automation's edge. Like I said before, it's got a lot of different names. It's called radios, it's called Wi-Fi, it's called industrial Ethernet, wireless LAN. This is not your Best Buy router, okay? This is industrial hardened, reliable wireless Ethernet. It allows you to reach out. If you see the quote at the bottom, you can't control what you can't measure. I take it one step further. You can't measure what you can't connect to, right? So this is all about connecting. ProSoft's tagline is where automation connects. Okay, so that's everything that we do ties into connecting. So, why would you do this? Why do you need this? Simplest answer, when you can't or just don't want to use a physical cable, right? It's really that simple. There's a lot of other reasons. It's cheaper, it's faster to deploy, it's easier to maintain. But basically, if you think about this, if you have a set of these radios, let's say within a couple miles, there's no trenching, you don't have to get permits, you're not digging up blacktop, right? You're not laying trays and scaffolding, you're not pulling wire, conduits. You literally set up 2 radios on your desk, link them, then turn them off and put them out in the field, and then turn them on again. It's done. It's not that smart. It's literally an Ethernet or a fiber optic cable replacement. You can see some of the applications here. The product is pretty simple. We have one radio, okay? And you configure this radio as either a master or a client or a repeater or a client repeater It doesn't matter. It's all the same product. You just tell it what it is. You buy one product. There's an IP20 version, which is this. It typically lives in an enclosure. There's an IP67 version, which you could bolt to the pier of a drawbridge in Vermont, right, exposed to the weather. They are purpose-built to be used with Rockwell. They have add-on instructions, okay? So the PLC can get diagnostic information from this guy, signal strength, data rate, all sorts of information, which could be used in like a failover application. The PLC knows that something's going wrong, that somebody drove a truck between the two radios. They tend to need to be line of sight. Somebody drove a truck through them, the signal's going down, the PLC's gonna know. It could text somebody like something's wrong with the network. So lots of things. But this radio, the ProSoft radio, has something that no other industrial radio on the market has. It's called ultra-fast roaming. And I could explain what that is and why it's important. So basically, anytime you're using a radio like this, it usually breaks down to one of two applications. It's either stationary or mobile, right? So if you think of, if I start with stationary, two water towers talking to each other, line of sight, right? A pipeline where you need to get the data down the pipeline. You pass it from one to the next and the next. Everything that's listed here, just oil and gas, water, it's big in water. I'm going to show you some examples, but just nothing's moving. But on the right here, you see mobile applications. This is where things get serious, right? So now you're talking about amusement park rides, roller coasters, anything that spins. You can eliminate slip rings, anything that spins. That's usually pretty important. Electrified monorails, skillet lines in automotive plants, AGVs in a warehouse. Anything where, look, you're not going to tether an AGV in a warehouse, right? It's going to be wireless. So, but the big thing is you can do SIP safety over wireless, right? And a lot of other radios can't do that. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. So here's a typical stationary application. Maybe it's a tank farm. You guys know what a tank farm is? You drive by and you see them on the road all the time. A bunch of gas and oil tanks. Nothing's moving, but they all need to be interconnected, let's say back to a central control room. These radios, when you configure them, you tell them if they're a master or a client or a repeater. And you see in this image, the one on the top left is a master to the master control room. The one to the right of that is a client repeater, because it's not just a client, but it repeats off to the next radio. Perfect example, I mentioned at the beginning of this about connecting to the edge, water and wastewater, right? You have your enterprise network, you have your control network, and then out somewhere, I call this in plant. It's out there, but it's not too far. Mile, couple of miles, right? Line of sight, you could see it. You can connect now to that device. And you see the pair of radios here connecting the clarifier back to the control network. So what does that look like in real life? That red square represents the wastewater treatment, let's say, building where the SCADA lives. And that device wants to see, you want to connect to all these 12 clarifying pools. So this customer in particular, they had a choice to trench and lay 12 fiber optic lines, right? With all that's involved with that. If you look on the bottom left, the solution detail, they put a micro 850, micro 820 on each clarifier line. They put a compact Logix back in the control room, and they turned it on. It was basically like that. Now let's talk about the cool stuff. The mobile applications. If you look at this image, everything in this image is stationary except the red box. Okay, the red box is moving to the right. So what will happen is this: if you imagine that this application was an AGV in a warehouse, let's say this room was a warehouse, right? You'd have fixed access points on the walls, on the ceiling, all around, giving like a blanket coverage of Wi-Fi to the room. Now, down on the floor, you might have 10, 5, 100, 5,000 bots running around doing all that, what's called ASRS, automated storage and retrieval, right? They're picking and everything. Anytime you have automated mobile equipment in proximity with people, you're going to have a safety protocol running, right? SIP safety, ProSafe, whatever. I failed to mention that This radio doesn't care if it's Rockwell or not. It happens to be, it's got a lot of good hooks to Rockwell, but it doesn't have to be. So what happens is, let's say I'm the AGV, and the radio inside me is talking to the access point right here, but I start driving that way. What you're seeing in this picture here is exactly that. The radio inside the AGV recognizes that the connection to that radio is getting weaker, and the connection to that radio is getting stronger. So it hops. That's what's shown in the picture, okay? It hops. The technical term for that is roaming, okay? It roams. What's the big deal? The big deal is this. If there's a safety protocol running, that safety protocol is sending a heartbeat out to that bot, right? And I believe if this connection is severed, then, and the bot doesn't reply with the heartbeat, that safety protocol must shut down the bot, right? Well, in the process of this roam, there's a finite amount of time, it's very short, where there's no comms, right? You have no connection. The simple example I give is this. Stare at your palm and blink. How much time did you not see your palm during the blink, right? Well, that might be enough time for the safety protocol to time out, right? That doesn't happen with the ProSoft radio because it roams so fast. We advertise 10 millisecond roaming, but it's more like 2. It's like 5 times faster than anybody else in the market, 10 times faster than like commercial access points. I will get a call from somebody and all I have to say is, are you experiencing nuisance timeouts? And they go, yep. Try this. So to sum up the industrial wireless, why would you use it? It's so easy to deploy, it's cheaper, it's reliable. This is not your Best Buy Wi-Fi. This is not the Wi-Fi in your house, right? And where to use it. I just rattled off a list there of different applications, but I mentioned about replacing slip rings, so bottling applications, filling applications, pharmaceutical, Coca-Cola, Pepsi. If your customers are experiencing problems with the slip ring, you can replace it with 2 radios. So that's enough about that. The other wireless application is what we call secure remote access. And I'm kind of going to sort of define what it is. Let me see if this comes up. Did that come up? Okay. A lot of companies do secure remote access. ProSoft does a lot of what the other companies do. We do some of it a little different. So what is it? It's a cloud-based, managed, secure remote access. No software involved. All you need is a web browser and a ProSoft Connect account. What ProSoft does different than anybody else is that there's 2 ways to do remote access, and I listed here. There's on demand and there's always on. Everybody does on demand, right? I build a machine, I ship it to Australia, I get a phone call in the middle of the night, my night, not theirs, that the machine is down. I'm laying in bed at 2 in the morning, I flip open my laptop, I create a secure VPN tunnel, and now it's like I'm in Australia. I take out Studio or whatever I got to use to debug it, all before I buy airline tickets to Australia, right? That's the concept. That's on demand, right? Everybody does that. It looks like this, right? You create that tunnel, that whole Australia example that I talked about. Now, nobody does always on. What does that look like? Imagine, as a good example, a wastewater utility, right? I'm the SCADA back at the central plant, and I've got, 2, 10, 200 remote sites, pump stations, lift stations, whatever, it doesn't matter. The same way we did that on-demand connection, we can do an always-on connection. So now I've got all 200 sites, including where the SCADA lives, all connected all the time. It's replacing 900 megahertz frequency hopping radios. It's replacing lease line modems. It's replacing copper wire. That's basically the technology. The products that ProSoft makes to address these applications are listed right here. There's a cellular gateway, like I have here. There's a wired gateway, which I don't have here, but basically it's, you plug it into local internet. Because if you think about that example I said before, If I have 200 sites, but one of them is the wastewater treatment building, I don't need cellular there, right? I can just plug into the internet. So, and the third guy up there is a data logger, right, which sometimes goes along with it. This data logger is pretty nifty because think about this. You have a SCADA, and it's monitoring all these remote sites, and it's recording everything. But what if you lose comms to the site for whatever reason? The radio goes down, the cell tower goes down, whatever the reason you lose comms to the site. That data logger is living at the site. So if you're not using DNP3, then what are you talking about? You lose comms to the site, whether it's an hour, a day, 3 days. When the comms come back, the SCADA just says, give me that missing data. And it just pulls the missing data. So you have no holes in your data. Now here's an interesting part. Anytime you talk remote access with anybody, you're usually talking to one of two people or both on the customer end. The OT guy and the IT guy. Okay? It's the same discussion every time. I've been doing this for 4 years. I always have the exact same discussion. The operations guy has different KPIs than the IT guy, right? The operations guy, I listed him out here in these little circles. He wants it easy to use. He wants to be able to access his network from his yacht, right? He wants it reliable. He wants faster bandwidth than what he has today, right? He might have the copper lines or the frequency hoppers, and it's just not enough, especially with IIoT and smart water. You know, he's upgrading all his slicks in the field with compact logic 5069s, and he's going to get more data faster, but can his current telemetry handle it? So that part's easy. It's the guy on the right that there's a much longer conversation, okay? Because the guy on the right, the IT guy is like, no. No. You're not going to put something into my network where you, anytime you feel like it, can tunnel into my network, or even to my machine. Forget the network. So ProSoft developed something called defense in depth, right? There's multiple layers of security, because security is his number one concern. And if I go around this circle really quick, I mean, there's two-factor authentication. There's IP whitelisting. You could hang this off a network and say, there's 5 devices on this network, but it can only see 2 of them, right? So that would be IP whitelisting. Single sign-on, this is big. If you've never heard of single sign-on, this is SAML 2.0. This is Microsoft Active Directory, right? This is where you use your corporate credentials to log into something. So IT controls the credentials. They fire you, they cut you off. You quit, they cut you off, right? They're in control. 256-bit encryption, that's industry standard. That's not really a big deal. Single-use credentials. Every time you tunnel in, it creates a new password, and it's only good for that sign-in session. So you can't give it to somebody else, right? It's only good one time, one and done. There is no software. ProSoft manages everything in the cloud. Why is this good? You're not upgrading your software. There's no patches, nothing like that. You just need an email address and a web browser. That's all you need to have this work. ProSoft handles everything else. What else do I have there? Independent pen testing. We basically pay people to hack it. We just pay people to hack it, and when they hack it, they tell us how they did it, and we fix it. What else? There's a detailed audit trail, so that means you can go into ProSoft Connect, and you can see who logged in, when, what they connected to, right? So you can always look back at who was there, when, and what. But the best feature of all, and this is something ProSoft developed, is called Virtual Lockout Tagout, or VLOTO, we call it. And here's how it works. Let's say I'm the IT guy of a company, and there's a machine, and there's the machine builder. And the machine builder is trying to get into the machine, whether he was asked to do it by somebody at the company or not. He's trying to get in. Maybe somebody had a problem, said, hey, can you look at it? Or maybe he just decided, I'm going to do a firmware upgrade. Anytime he tries to tunnel into the machine, I'm going to get notified. And he has to specify on a per connection basis. This isn't like something you set up. It's every time somebody tries to get in, you have to tell me when, how long, why, and what IP addresses. And it comes to my email on my phone, and there's two buttons: let them in or deny them. Okay. Now I can modify it back, and I can say you can come in, but not now. You can come in tomorrow at 2 o'clock, and you can't have an hour. You can have 15 minutes, and you can't look at the PLC and the drive and the I/O and the HMI. You can only see the PLC. Approved. IT guys love it. So I think the theme of today's talk was simple, safe, and secure. Here's the simple part. Let's say you were trying to set up a network like this remote access. First thing, you need to buy the hardware, right? The cellular unit or the wired unit. Then you create a ProSoft Connect account. What do you need for that? Just an email. No charge. Set up an account. Then you set up, what's shown here are projects and team members. So if I was a system integrator, each one of those projects you can think of as like my customer. Right? I have 3 customers here. And for each project, you would specify the team members. And you specify different levels of authorization of the team members. Maybe you can only view it. Maybe you can view it and modify it, right? And I have like global rights to kick you out if I wanted to. Then you set up the vLotto. That's the screen on the right. You can list up to like 3 email addresses, and even those email addresses can be a group name. So you can have unlimited number of administrators. But let's just say you have 1. That's the person who's holding the keys to the castle, right? No one's getting in without that one letting you in. Now, maybe there's 3. Let's say you set up 3 people, because what if that guy's on PTO? The way it works is anyone allows, the guy's getting in. Anyone denies, the deny trumps the allow. So if 2 guys say yes and 1 guy says no, he's not getting in. And when he's in, if anyone says no while he's in, he's getting kicked out. Yeah. So that's that authorizer. And then a lot of people ask me this: you don't have to enable this feature, because some people think this is burdensome. Like, okay, don't use it, but it's there. After that, you connect to the device. You can connect from anywhere. Like I said, lying in bed, connect to the machine in Australia. As long as I have a web browser, I can do it. And then the screen on the right is sort of a quick glimpse at what the screen looks like, and you get all sorts of metrics on usage, and again the audit trail of who was in and when. You can configure it. You can configure a network. You can add team members. That's kind of just a glance at what it looks like. So again, if I take those 450 products and I lump them into these 4 quadrants, right? Bottom right, protocol converters. That's what ProSoft was founded on. Everybody knows that. Top right, modernization. Okay, it's a specialized form of protocol converter where now I'm going to take legacy to current. It's still a protocol conversion, but it's like specialized. But the top left, industrial wireless Ethernet. Anywhere you can't or don't want to run a physical cable, it is an edge enabler. It'll enable applications you couldn't do before. A very simple, quick example. I recently had a customer who was a hospital in Manhattan, and they had one building on one side of the FDR drive and another building on the other side. What are they going to do? Tunnel under the FDR? They just put 2 antennas on the roofs and pointed them at each other. Done. And lastly, the remote access, which was big, especially during COVID, right? People couldn't get to the office, but hey, they could remote in from home. Or for the case of like system integrators or OEMs, it can be a revenue generation stream. I have an OEM in Canada that builds chillers. And when I say chillers, I mean this is the type of machine you see hanging off of an ice rink. Big, right? With the steam coming out of it. They offer their customers a choice. They say, you can call us up and we'll check the machine out, or you can leave it permanently connected. We have 24/7 monitoring your machine. And they charge the customer. So that's basically it. I'm in 104, which is all the way over there, if anybody has any questions. And do you have any questions? That's it. Thanks.